Okay, let's go ahead and get started with this month's Volie session. For those of you who don't already know, which I'm going to guess is a very small number of you, today I am joined by Volie's founder and president, Scott Davis, and we appreciate the time. Scott, how's it going?
Good. In the hot seat. Can't wait for it today.
In the hot seat, you look like you're standing.
Yes. Well, so to speak.
Yes. So with that said, we have some great content lined up for all of you today. We're going to be going over some of the stats and strategies that you need to successfully run your service BDC. And with that said, Scott, we're going to be talking about a lot of data in particular. We have a lot of call data that we're going to be sharing with everyone today. Can you talk a little bit about how we've come to this data?
We put together a study. I was speaking at the David Kane show, and to put this presentation together, we took 10 million phone calls to put this data together. You know, most of the Volie customers are practicing these good habits and such, and a lot of it won't be a surprise for you guys, but thought we wanted to share it with everyone and just maybe jog some ideas and on how you can keep moving things forward. So 10 million phone calls, 3.4 point something million inbound and 6.8 point something million outbound.
Yeah, and with that said, today we're going to mix it up a little bit. Today we actually have a slide presentation that we're going to run through with you all today. And then like every other Volie session before this, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A here on Zoom or send them to me at jake@volie.com. And we'll go ahead and get to those questions at the end here. Scott, you want to go ahead and pull up the deck, and I think let's get started.
Sounds good. So like I said, we focused on 10 million phone calls. We went back a few months to grab this data for you guys today. And most of it, you'll know, should be well known to you, but like I said, let's get started. Decided to focus on service because we were meeting with one of our customers and they said, gee, you know, we're going to manage our margins back down to where they were before COVID. And, you know, a lot of our future customers come in the sales department or come in the service department for sales, and we can control our margins in sales. So hence, that's why we did this presentation. We also presented to David Kane and the Fixed Ops Roundtable, and hope you guys enjoy it today. So why did we do it? Well, I mean, you guys know running a BDC is hard. You know, turnover is higher at times. The complexity of a dealership has gotten much more complex, where productivity is generally before Volie stayed the same. And there's a lot of questions about, geez, how am I going to run my dealership profitably? What are we going to do to make sure the BDC is a good part of the dealership and profitable and making us money? So, you know, that's how we got to where we got, Jake.
Yeah, and we have can you repeat again for anyone who's just joined how we came to this data? How many inbound and how many outbound calls did we analyze to get this data?
Yeah, unless I tell you differently, because on a couple of them I took subsets because they were specific campaigns. It was 3.4 some million inbound calls and 6.8 plus million outbound calls across all of our dealers. So first of all, inbound. So you guys have all heard me say this. My kids know this. We go to Chick-fil-A a fair amount, and when we're traveling, and a lot of why we go, I'm positive why Chick-fil-A is #1 for average unit volume for fast dining is that they keep their promises with their customers. And I don't think it's the world's greatest cuisine. It's not bad. Mainly, they don't aggravate you when you come in the door. And that's kind of the inbound business in the dealership. The customers are generally calling. They're calling either to schedule an appointment or they're calling for status checks. They want help and they don't want to be aggravated. The first goal of any BDC is to make sure that they're Chick-fil-A and their customers and keeping their promise to them, not aggravating them. So when are most of the calls happening? So first of all, inbound is a math game. Every store does inbound. It's very important that you have enough people for the calls as they come in, their disbursements. And a lot of these things today, by the way, are things that you should be able to get. If we have any guests on the show today who aren't Volie customers, you probably get a lot of these out of your VoIP system as well. But inbound is math. You need X amount of people to handle the business and grow your business. So no surprise to you guys. Most of your calls would come between 8 and 5. Nothing exciting about that. The difference between 8 and 11 and 2 and 5 day parts is basically 9 to 10 o'clock. Easily 9 to 10 is the busiest hour of the day. Before 8, 4% of the calls come in. After 5, 3% of the calls come in. But, generally we know when we're supposed to staff. One of the keys for this is, if you stagger people in, make sure that everyone comes in who can come in at 9. The average inbound call was 4 minutes and 19 seconds. That includes transfers to service advisors and such. The average call where an appointment was made was 4 minutes and 41 seconds. So if you do that math and you figure with break times and such, agents can probably on average take 10 full inbound calls an hour. Depending on what they're calling for, it could be a lot more than that. It could be less if they need to do pricing checks and such. But just on average, if they can take 10 an hour in a perfect world, or 11, and then we know that calls never get perfectly dispersed. If you figure about 8 an hour or so, you can back into how many agents you need. So that's really one of the first keys. Mondays are different though. So this won't surprise you guys. Every one of you guys know that Mondays are different. But when you put numbers to it, it really shows. The average of Tuesday through Friday, if you take that and compare it with the Monday inbound volume across all these stores, it was 39% more inbound calls on average across all these stores. And it's really astounding. So your staffing strategy starts and stops from day one with Mondays. Any part-time strategy you have, add them on Mondays. Any days off, let's hope that you get them to take off a day other than Monday. So no surprise, but just a good reminder. One of the things that was surprising to me, I can't really explain it, even though maybe a lot of people are looking for this service or their callbacks, but the outbound contact rate was 11.4% better on Mondays. So all the way around, Mondays are different. Finally, just one thing, Jake. If you're not open on Saturday for your BDC, the stores that are, they got about 9% of their calls on Saturdays. So there are opportunities to grow your business by having a skeleton crew on Saturdays, and you can take care of the customers.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's interesting in the fact that the outbound contact rate is higher on Mondays, I think all of this data, this and the last slide, the majority of your calls are from 9 to 10. People are looking to get things out of the way. They think about them on the weekends. They think about them on Sunday, make a to-do list for the week. So, maybe that explains why they're answering more calls on Monday, because they're expecting it, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, it seems logical. It doesn't really matter. We've got enough calls to know that it's true. I actually spot checked the answer rates, and the one store I checked, it was over 39% on Monday, and it is. Mondays are different. How about your drop rate? So now we're really talking about whether we're pleasing our customers or aggravating them. Only 37% of the customers who dropped called back in within 7 days for the dealership. People want to get helped. Of the people who have a previous who dropped, 74%, since we're sitting on the DMS data, they had a previous service appointment in the DMS. So these people are buyers that are inbound calls. Make sure that you're calling back these people that are drops, and make sure we're really cognizant of what the drop percentage is. I was really surprised by the drop rate by duration, though. When we put these numbers together, Sam helped me with them, and we started with a much wider range. I thought this number would be different, but 43% of the calls dropped in less than 30 seconds. People don't want to wait on hold. We've got a couple tricks up our sleeve coming later that can help the customers with that, but about half the calls almost dropped in less than 30 seconds. Customer drops, those in the Volie platform, we define those as people that it hit the IVR and then they just hung up. People generally hate IVRs. So I'll talk about what some of these things mean. Just a couple other stats. The average hold time for all the customers across here was 78 seconds. The average time that you transferred it to a service advisor, 2 minutes and 4 seconds. So that's 2 minutes and 4 seconds that the customers on the phone, they didn't want to be. That was 2 minutes and 4 seconds that service advisor couldn't be selling. So if you guys have strategies to eliminate transfers or status checks or handle those in some other ways, you'll make your customers happier. So what happens if you do call them back? Of the people, if you do call them back, 53% answer. So on a normal service retention campaign, you're going to get 30 to 35% of the people back. Across all our campaigns, factoring in people who haven't been in for well over a year, the answer rate is about 20% on all. So and the conversion rate is 17-18% across all campaigns. If you call back a customer in Volie or in any system who dropped, 53% answer, 34% schedule an appointment. So, for all you Volie customers out there, make sure you empty that missed call queue every single day, because there's business in it. If you've got a VoIP system or something, figure out some way to call these people back. A lot of them, like GoTo, have logs in there. They won't dedupe them and you won't know who they are, but they are people who are looking for help, and quite a few of them are buyers. So
34% is a huge number. And, people aren't expecting this kind of service, right? We've had multiple Volie customers, and I'm thinking of one in particular, who've sent us recordings of a call where they called back a customer and he was just surprised, because people don't expect this, but they will answer, as shown in the data here.
Yeah. One other note, I mentioned customer drops earlier. Those are also in the callback screen, the people who just hate IVRs and hung up immediately. So yeah, they're not expecting it. The only difference in a lot of businesses nowadays is how you make them feel. This is a good way to let them know that you care and you want to help them. When you're running your inbound business, I would really focus on the drop rate. I try to keep it 6-7%. You're never going to get it 0, because the calls are never going to get perfectly dispersed. There's a great Volie rally, Jake, that our weekly show with Julianne Falls that's coming out from Fred Beans. Their drop rate is about half of what the standard would be, and I recommend everyone listen to that one. But it's your service BDC starts with that as a strategy. Don't aggravate the people who are trying to do business with you. So how are we going to grow the business? So, we've got to interrupt customers, right? So we've got to interrupt them just like they do in a sales BDC. It's not as fun as taking an inbound call. And you've got to put a strategy in place to include revenue calls in these outbound calls. So, and I'll talk about why in a second here, but So our plan is to build a strategy where you build customer pay RO business by calling, emailing, SMSing your customers outbound. First of all, we hear all the time, oh, my customers don't answer on this date. They don't answer at these times. It's not good to call them. Then we only do it at this point. Well, as you can see, the answer rates are about 20% better in the morning, but they're still answering the phones at night and they're converting about the same. So don't talk yourself into that certain day parts are bad. Remember our disbursement of inbound calls, where with that 93% come in between 8 and 5. Good general rule to just keep it cooking the entire day. One of the things that we talk about on occasion and spoke about it with our customer success team today, talking about helping our customers work with making all of their agents look like their best agents. This is kind of a funny stat. We found 91,200 people that the agent dispositioned the call is not interested, and they came in for service in the next couple months. So most of our agents that our dealers use, they're good, nice, hardworking people. A lot of these are just simply training opportunities. As you guys look at this, break out these stats down by the agent efficiencies and productive time, and try to make all of your agents look like your best ones. Listen to calls, have coaching opportunities, because 91,000 people came in anyway, and some people maybe just want it off the phone, but just keep that in mind. Boy, this is weird. I'm not used to you saying so little, Jacob.
It's great data. I'm eating it up.
All right. We get asked this all the time. This is actually 250,000 attempts from one dealer group, and these are all revenue calls, low funnel calls that people can buy, or that people are going to buy who are going to call. We looked at this data. 51% answered on the first attempt, 22 on the second, 18 the third, and 15 on the fourth. They all converted about the same, and they were all very profitable. When you got over 5 attempts, the answer rate got below 10, and the conversions were very low. But I wanted to include this slide because we have a lot of stores asking on service retention how many attempts they should make, or geez, we only make 1 attempt and we send them an email. Well, if you manage and you benchmark inbound, outbound together, and you make sure that you're making your attempts, you will get more business by making more attempts. So make more than 1 attempt. What about potential spam? So all of the Volie customers, I guess technically everyone who's been on since May of last year, and most of the ones before, we bundle in dealer identity to protect against potential spam. For anyone not listening here, or who's listening who's not a Volie customer, your answer rate on those low funnel calls, the service retention calls, so not going out, not deep attempts, should be about 30 to 35%. We see some more. We see some campaigns with less. If you're a Volie customer, don't worry if you're less. I looked at one that had answer rates of 18%. They were making many more attempts out, which lowered their answer rate. But if on a normal service retention campaign with low attempts, 32%, if you're below that, you might want to check your lines. So how would you check your lines, Jake?
Well, the best thing that you can do, really the only thing you can do, but you need to do test calls. You need to take all of your outgoing lines and test them against a phone with Verizon, with AT&T, and T-Mobile, and see how they're coming up. Really, if you want to be on top of it, you probably need to do it every day, but at least once a week, you should be doing test calls, and unless you have someone monitoring it for you. But it's pretty tough, and people don't answer those calls.
Yeah, I mean, and like Jacob says quite often, they call it potential spam because the carriers don't really know. A lot of your calls are unfairly labeled. Some estimates, the 2021 estimate was about 31% of all calls for business. Jake, wasn't it 8% of the lines that we test, or when we enroll a dealer identity customer, that are labeled as potential spam or have an issue? Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that's about right. I mean, keep in mind, not every phone number that the dealers have is going to be their highest volume line, of course. But so it's not unexpected to see that they don't have 100% of them flagged. But that's about right.
8%, those are the lines that they're making most of the calls on. So
yeah, those 8% probably account for 97% of all calls from the store.
Yeah. So just if you don't have Volie, or for our guests here, make sure you're checking that. So okay, let's talk about the math. Anecdotally, I feel like when we do sales calls, and Alex or Joanne or someone might correct me on this, but anecdotally, when we feel like the average dealership makes about 20 outbound calls a day, besides the inbound calls. A lot of them make none. A lot of those 20 tend not to be revenue calls either, but that's a topic for another day. I've got some great data that will come on that very shortly. But the difference between getting your agents from 20 outbound calls to 100 on those lower funnel items, 100 outbound attempts, if you have 32 conversations and you're converting at 20% of the people you talk to, that's 7 appointments. If you're converting on 30, it's about 9. So just 100 attempts a day per agent instead of 20 is about 28 extra customer pay RO appointments a week at $285 or whatever your average is. That's very significant. And those numbers are very achievable. So they take practice. If you're a new account with us, just know that, it takes a bit to work the pace and get that all figured out, but you can all do that. And some of those benchmarks, definitely our success team is going to be benchmarking to a lot of this and looking at your campaigns and talking about it in the future coming up.
Yeah. Yeah. We certainly hear a lot of folks who pre-Volie, they don't have the bandwidth to be making any outbound calls. They're struggling with inbound so much. So being able to put a plan in place to get to some of these is very important. Otherwise, you may just be throwing away money, so to speak.
How do you get from how do you raise the level? I mean, you guys all do coaching. Most of you guys are owners or managers in here. Remember, we're talking about making all of your agents look like your best ones. Make sure you play some recordings. One of our customers, Kim Grubb from Joe Cooper, was another Volie rally. When was that released, Jacob?
Last week, I believe.
So Kim talks about her process that she starts the day with. Every single person should listen to Kim. She did an awesome job talking about that, and a good way to get up these conversion numbers. So, okay. So here's what I always wonder. What if we did nothing? I mean, every bit of advertising and marketing and subscribing to software, everything you ever do, you're like, well, geez, is this getting me business? What if I did nothing? So this slide kind of plays that out. Of the 6.8+ million calls that we studied, this wasn't a true do nothing, but we had to pick customers who were loyal customers of the dealership. So we divided these people into 3 groups. The first group was people that they made an attempt, the dealer did not reach them, and they didn't leave a voicemail. The next group were the people that they spoke with. So control group and then the responders. The people who you didn't get and you didn't do anything, 22% came in anyway in the next couple of months. Now they should. These are your loyal customers. You brought them up because they're due. 22%. The people that you spoke with, 34% of them came in. interrupting your customers is profitable. That's a 51% lift about. There's really good advantages to scheduling an outbound appointment, even if they were going to come in anyway, if we could read minds. So, here's how I look at it. Number one, a lot of you guys are trying to hire more techs. When you schedule someone proactively, you get to schedule them based on your schedule instead of them calling and saying, hey, it's Friday, I need this appointment Saturday morning. That's one good advantage. Secondly, if you focus on those people that they're due, they might be a little bit late. We kind of classify those as lazy customers. You're going to get some people who are going to defect. Your customers are not thinking of you as much as you think of them. And then finally, this is harder math than I can do. Jacob, you were good at math. You're on up. If you get everyone consistently to come in a few weeks earlier than they would on their own, and you sped up your database, that is a lot more service revenue long term. So it does pay to interrupt people. It does pay to reach out to them by a lift of about 51%. So if you need, just 50 more appointments a week, you need to make 850 more attempts, and with all the other things in mind, training your agents and putting a strategy in place to be calling the right people and all those type of things.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind as well when it comes to customers' calling habits, not only if you're dialing them, do you get to schedule them on your time, but you also remove them from clogging up your inbound lines and potentially dropping off and all the other things we're talking about too. There is a great advantage in dialing.
Yeah. When are we going to break, Jake? I'm down to a few slides here.
Let's keep going, and don't forget, everyone, when we're wrapping up here, we will take any questions and answers. Type those in the chat box here, the Q&A chat box here on Zoom, or go ahead and send them to me at jake@volie.com, and we will get to those at the end. We've already had a couple come in here, so make sure to get any questions you have down there for us so we can get to them.
So this one is not for the Volie customers. Volie, as you guys know, loads and manages data. We dedupe it, etc. And when we looked across DMS data, there's a lot of duplicates just because of trade-ins that they don't catch. A lease is not a purchase in some DMSs, so that doesn't unhook the other one. Or in CDK, you can create a new customer without looking up a customer for service and such. OEM data, you guys get in those lists, and the same people are on it every month, or they don't own their car, those type of things. Excuse me. This is not for Volie customers because we do this for you. But if for our guests on the show today, make sure that you're somehow trying to eliminate people you called last month, even if it's spreadsheets and pivot tables and such, because it'll aggravate your customers. If you're calling them unintentionally, it'll add to your agent's workload. So that was not really a Volie slide, but or for our Volie customers, but wanted to put that in there. So
just to add to that, when we said, like we said, we shared this data at a conference a couple of weeks ago. And then we, wanted to share it with all of you. But that stat in particular about the cleanliness, so to speak, of the data that you have that was something that multiple people came up and told us was extremely surprising to them. So it's interesting for sure how bad this data is.
I got called on the carpet by one of our questionnaires here because I skipped something on the slide. So I'm glad you guys are paying attention. What happens if you leave a voicemail? The difference on these 6.8 million outbound calls was about it was between 3 and 4% conversion rate. People heard the voicemail, they went on the website, did an online schedule or something, but the conversion rates were better. If you're taking the time to dial them, take the time to leave a voicemail. So Sorry about that. Thanks for catching me there. So benchmarking. These are, we took what we consider good benchmarks for you to shoot for over multiple dealer groups and single stores to look at. First of all, agent efficiency. If you can get your efficiency, so your productive time is 85% of the time you're punched in, that is about 50 minutes an hour out of 60 minutes. So if someone takes a 10-minute break every hour, if you go to lunch or whatever, if it's 85%, you can make all of these numbers you're making. Look at where you're at with agent efficiency, because we see many groups at 85% or above. Drop rate. I have this theory that if you're over 10, you'll never grow your service business. That is some math I'm working on. But when we benchmark this, we'd love to get the drop rate below 6. 6, 7, 8, 9 is in the ballpark. But try to shoot for a 6% drop rate. We have quite a few dealer groups where their drop rate is 3%. So, that is somewhat of a math problem, and your drop rate will never be 0. Keep that in mind. So callback percentage, whether you have Volie or something else, you need to empty that every day. So the standard needs to be that all voicemails that don't come in after hours, but during, while your agents are there, all missed calls, they get returned that day. Remember, 53% answer, 34% schedule appointments. So don't forget to do that. Blended. So when we bring on a lot of new customers, it's not uncommon for a dealership to say, oh, I've got an inbound team and an outbound team. Or, hey, I've got people who just do inbound and then they take a break and they do outbound, or that type of thing. You can have a 6% drop rate or less with blended inbound, outbound, and you should benchmark to it. The best dealerships groups that we have, if they take 70 inbound calls a day, they're making 140 outbound attempts a day. I'm thinking of one dealership group in Florida that actually beats these numbers, but just kind of a loose rule of thumb, take your inbound calls and double them. I mean, if the inbound rate is very low, I mean, if you're doing nothing but outbound, it's, you're making 42 attempts an hour, but run your dealership for all our guests, run your dealership as blended. Make sure you benchmark both inbound and outbound, and you'll grow your business. You'll have a little better chance. Answer rates, 30 to 35%. We're talking service retention. If people don't answer, then they're getting below on these lower funnel calls, you need to be checking those lines. And then conversion rates, we'd like to see appointments on 30% of the outbound people that you speak to, and obviously that depends on the list you're calling as well. So definitely you can get 20 on them, but that is a number that should be tracked.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we make all of our agents look like our best ones? Just when you come in the morning, and like I said, listen to the Kim Grubb Valley Rally from a couple weeks ago, but this is an actual dealership. I changed some of the names to protect the innocent. The contact rates on this dealership group, it's a 2-store group. They're a little bit lower because the way they run their campaigns, they're doing many more attempts. So it lowers the contact rate, just for anyone saying, gee, Scott said 35%. But I just want to point to Damien here. His contact rate is 3.47%. All of these people are logged into the same queues. Damien is pumping up his outbound attempts and dialing and hanging up. Just, double check that. The other one, I mean, we could go through a list. These are just a couple examples. Erica Her contact rate's about the same. Her inbound calls are low. She must be newer, but her conversions are a decent percentage. But her outbound conversion is only 7%. I would pull a bunch of calls with Erica. I would train her and get her to bring that up. So if you guys aren't, if you're for the managers on the call, if you aren't trying to compare your agents, and you can do it in the agent efficiency report, you can do it in the heat report, drilling down, get some of these stats and then listen to some calls and coach your people up. You can make a huge impact. Key learnings. So blended is better. Most of all of our Volie customers do that. But first thing first, take the steps to manage inbound. We've got some vendors on the call, by the way, awesome vendors. The drop rate for vendors, we've got a lot of vendors under a 6% drop rate as well. But first thing first, manage inbound, call everyone back. Effort matters. If you're making revenue calls, especially, the more thoughtful phone calls you make, the more you convert. Just like in your sales BDC, right? Generally, the agents with the most activity, all things being equal, are going to make the most sales. Being cheerful, people can hear it in you. I have this in here. Leave a voicemail. It'll pay off. Your strategy starts with Monday. So no Mondays off. Everything else around your service BDC scheduling starts with Monday. And then finally, just remember, our customers don't think of us as much as we think of them, ever. So if you don't interrupt them, you've got a good chance of losing them. And don't assume that with one attempt, they're going to schedule an appointment, because they maybe have gotten 10 voicemails for the day. Maybe they moved on and forgot something. I know I think about all you guys constantly. I can't help it, but I know that you're worried about your own stuff within those four walls, and I totally get it. Don't make the same mistake about your customers. Make multiple attempts. Make a concerted effort to get through your outbound queues, and you can do great things. So there you are, Jake.
I think one other key learning that is, kind of obvious when you say it out loud, but going through all of this, you got to have some method to put some science behind some things, right? Put some methods in place to track, to benchmark, to train, and really have a strategy, and that will help you grow your BDC and your business as a whole, as opposed to, just kind of winging it, right? Oh, we're trying to take the inbound, trying to manage the inbound calls that we have. We're trying to do, have a plan, put some science behind it, and I think you'll be well off. We're going to go ahead now and get ready for the Q&A. We're going to bring Eliza from the Volie team in here. She has something to share with you all, and then we'll get to the Q&A here, and then we'll wrap it up, give you all a little time back maybe. But if you haven't already, go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A here on the Zoom, or email them to me at jake@volie.com, and we'll get to those questions in just a couple of minutes.
All right, I am going to share my screen then and pull up some screenshots really quick. So that was a good segue for me on the last couple of things that Jake mentioned about putting science behind what you're doing. We are working on setting some goals with all of our accounts, and part of that kind of being strategic, looking at things, whether it's scientifically or, in our reports, but picking a goal and kind of tracking your progress, right? So week by week, making sure that we're moving in the right direction. To tie in some of the things that Scott was talking about, he's talking about making outbound revenue generating phone calls. You may have, several different campaigns or types of communications that are potentially revenue generating. How do you pick which ones to prioritize? I'm going to show really quick just two of my go-to reports when I'm trying to analyze campaign performance. So not necessarily rep performance, but overall for this audience that I'm targeting, is it worth my while? The first place I always start is this campaign performance report. It's not new. It's kind of tried and true. I come to it every time. One of the first things that I look at is this contact rate column. Scott talked about contact rate. There's a couple of variables that are within your control and definitely variables that might fall outside of your control. If you reach someone at the perfect moment, but their dog is barking, they might not pick up the phone, kind of thing. But anyways, when you're analyzing your campaigns, look at the contact rate. Contact rate for your active customer base is generally going to be higher than contact rates for your lazy and lost customers. That doesn't mean that you never reach out to those people. But if you've only got 100 phone calls left for the day, maybe you focus on your active customers and you instead decide to email or text your lazy and lost customers because you know that your active audience is more likely to pick up the phone. We set a benchmark, or I set a benchmark right around 30% for that contact rate. Anything over 30%, I'm like, yes, let's keep it going. Below 30%, I'm starting to dig in to say, is it really worth making this phone call? Second metric that I look at in this report is my appointment rate. And I have 3 different ways to look at that appointment rate or my conversion rate. I can look at my conversion for attempt where I'm making contact with the customer, or for overall enrolled customer. You can use all 3. When I'm evaluating, is it worth making the phone call? I look at 4 attempts. I want to know, not per customer who picks up, not even per customer unique that I'm enrolling in this campaign, per dial that I'm asking my reps to do, is it worth my while to make this type of phone call? So for the 4 attempts, you're going to be a little bit lower than 4 contacts. 4 contacts is where Scott was referring to. Maybe you shoot for 25, 30%. 4 attempts, you're going to be lower than that. So maybe shooting for 10 to 15%. We want to make sure that it's worth our while to make these phone calls. Campaign performance report. The next report that I have pulled up that I think is worth digging into, this is a newer report. It's the performance report. Pull up the appointments tab when you come into this report and look at your show rates. You want to make sure it's great that you're scheduling appointments. Are customers actually showing up? And that can be indicative of whether or not your team is setting good appointments, right? So are we setting a specific date and time? Are we getting the buy-in from the customer? Are they confirming? Are we reminding them about upcoming appointments, making sure that they're actually showing up? Another cool thing on this page is you get the daily averages. So you can see on average how many appointments your team is setting per day. You can look at this per campaign or per store. So how many appointments are we creating per day? And then how many shows are we getting per day of those appointments that we had previously set? So 2 good reports, easy to look at, quick filtering, quick benchmarks. This is the first place I would go. That campaign performance report, and then just the plain old performance report, both are in the reporting section. Talk about these with your rep if you haven't ever before. We would like to help you set some goals and maybe pick a particular campaign or, a particular conversion rate that you want to improve on over the next couple of weeks. And we'll help you kind of benchmark and monitor those. So let us know.
Great. Awesome. Thanks, Liza.
Okay.
As always, everyone, if you have any questions on this today, go ahead and reach out to your Volie rep and they'll help you out with that. We have some questions that have come in that we'll get to. Last time I'll say it, go ahead and get any other questions that you have in the chat here. And let's go ahead and get through it. Scott, first off, how can everyone listening get a copy of the slides and the information that we've gone through? Obviously, this will be posted on YouTube early next week. But yeah, can they get a copy of the slides?
Yeah, of course. Liza's success team has them all. So when they send out the recordings, we can send them out. So
Perfect. Okay. Another question. What kind of campaigns are the outbound calls for that you're talking about?
So when we took those 6.8 million calls, they were across all the dealers' campaigns. They included service retention, they included lost customers, et cetera. Generally, most of our customers focus on service retention, but this was all of them. So when you see some of those numbers for conversions, they're lowered by calling people who are out 15 months and such.
Okay. Oh, I marked the wrong one. Okay. How many outbound caller IDs should we have on our account? Should we have an outbound number for each campaign queues or only one?
Gosh, we should have had Liza on that one. I think we'll come back to that one with her. It depends really what you're trying, how you're trying to track things. I mean, we have campaign level reporting, but since you have dealer identity, I don't, the number that you have is good. I mean, the callback will come back in. I think we should have asked Liza that one. I think we'll, I think we should check with her on that one. So,
hey, Liza, if you can hop back in, we'll come back to that one. Otherwise, go ahead and touch base with your Volie rep, and they'll get you the answer you're looking for. Another question here. To help prevent spam likely. Okay, I can, if that's, thank you for typing back in. I can answer that then. Okay, so to help prevent against spam likely, I mean, ultimately the answer is just, it depends, right? So ultimately the carriers do not know unless you go through a process like the dealer identity process to let them know who you are, why you're calling, and what are your phone numbers. The carriers don't know who owns a phone number. And when they see your outgoing number, they don't know who that is, right? So really the answer is just, it depends. And there's pros and cons to both. If you have all of your traffic going through one outbound number, if that number gets flagged as spam, then all of your calls are going to be going to spam, right? Whereas if you have every campaign or, every agent using their own phone number, then, you don't put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak, right? The other thing that to keep in mind there is, if you go ahead and go through the dealer identity process to ensure that your numbers are clean and will not come up as spam, then, in that case, I would probably, wouldn't worry about it and would go ahead and use maybe your main dealership number or whatever you want customers to see, but also still keep in mind, ultimately, if you use one number and that number gets flagged as spam, all of your calls will not be connected, right? As for what exactly causes your numbers to come up as spam, so is it better to have a high volume of calls or a low volume of calls? I can't really answer that, and we really can't answer that perfectly well, because the carriers don't make everything super clear, because then actual scammers could get around the algorithms, right? All I can tell you is that numbers are flagged as spam due to crowdsourcing information, which is what the carriers call it, customer feedback. So if you call a customer and then they report to Verizon, hey, this number was spam, they take that into account. That's about 40% of why calls get flagged. The other 60% is due to the algorithms that are analyzing all of your calls. And, we really, we don't know everything that they're looking at. They are looking at call duration, call volume, and a ton of things. But the best thing that you can do is to go through a process like the dealer identity. If you're doing it on your own, then I probably wouldn't put all of your eggs in one basket. I probably would split up your calls, probably by agent is what I do. Then I'd make sure that you're monitoring the lines, doing test calls, and trying to make sure they don't come up as spam. So I hope that answers.
By the way, Oh, yeah, sorry, Jake. I want to jump in here and answer the question that I thought Liza had asked, or that we're going to have Liza jump in. She texted me. She advises one outbound number. Tell your customers that this is your number and ask them to save it and call back when they need to schedule.
Mhm.
So keep that consistency, keep that branding in there. Your number's your brand. And of course, she considers that best practice. That was a good answer. So
Yeah. And that's why it's all the more important to make sure that particular number is clean. So, okay. Next question. Are those blended numbers that you shared per agent per day?
yes, they are. So those were for service BDC. They were in there, and they can vary wildly based on what you're doing. So but the one dealership group that I take a lot of the stats from, or that I do some of the benchmarking from, they do a great job, and they run tens of thousands of calls through Volie a month. They average 70 inbound calls, 160 outbound attempts a day. So we've got some extremely effective BDCs, and that averaged about 1.5 outbound attempts to inbound. But yeah, and those can vary wildly. I mean, if you say you're a vendor and you're updating the CRM, you might work really hard to get to 100 or 200 a day with no inbound calls. If you're doing outbound only on a list and no inbound, you should be doing about 42 an hour. So, but yeah, those were blended.
Okay, next one is, what was the start contract date? Dealer identity is bundled in. And we were looking at, I don't remember the exact date, but it was start to middle of June last year. So June 22. And keep in mind that the structure.
Jake, go ahead.
Yeah. Keep in mind that the structure of how the program works is a little different if you're a dealer or you are a vendor, calling on behalf of other businesses. In order to be in compliance with all the rules and regulations, that it's a little different how it's structured. But June 22, is when it started to be bundled in for dealers. And if you have any questions on how that works or want to talk more about dealer identity, go ahead and reach out to your Volie rep, or you can reach out to me, jake@volie.com, and we can certainly have a conversation. So,
hey, and Jake, just to add to that, the reason we can bundle it in for the Volie customers that we can't with the dealer, because we can certify their entity and that they're making these calls. If you're an outsourced call center, you have to take extra steps to give permissions to let the carriers know what's happening. Correct?
Yep. Yeah. So
Okay.
It's just a little different, and we can have a more in-depth conversation for you. Okay. Last one we have here. Do you have a generic KPI structure you send to your customers?
The person who answered this call is maybe one of the greatest speakers in automotive. And I hate to tell you this, that we're just putting all that together and standardizing it. Liza and I actually spoke about this Thursday morning, and then on our call today with our reps, we are building in benchmarking into the platform. We now aren't victims by the law of small numbers. We will have that very soon. I do have some incredible numbers that we're gonna roll out in the next few months on breaking down these outbound campaigns a little bit more. We're also got a project that we're working on that will combine with dealer pay plans. So there's a lot more coming your way on those.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for the time today, everyone. It was great to go through this data with you. Again, this will be posted on YouTube next week. And as always, reach out to your rep if you have any other questions, and or if there's anything else that we can help you with. Scott, everyone here probably knows, but just to say the obvious, what can people do if they want to get in touch with you?
Scott@volie.com, 319-240-2743. I'll answer my phone. And I love to hear from you guys. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Sounds great. Thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic day. And thanks for the time.
Thank you.